can you use patterns to your advantage on the GMAT? Hi, I'm Julia, and I'm going to discuss how recognizing patterns can save you a ton of time and effort, and it can improve your score. Now, you might be thinking patterns as in 2, 4, 8, 16. What's next? This is a little bit different, but it's not as different as you may worry. You'll still be noticing patterns. They'll just be a bit more on the conceptual side. The first pattern that you will encounter on all 3 sections is that there is a finite amount of knowledge you need to bring to the exam, but you will need to be able to apply that knowledge dynamically. And that requires a deep understanding of how the knowledge works. For instance, a significant percentage of critical reasoning questions are dependent on assumptions. In addition to questions directly asking about identifying assumptions, you need to understand assumptions on strengthen the argument questions, weaken the argument questions, and evaluate the argument questions. The good news is that if you understand how to break down arguments into their components and find the missing assumptions, that's the skill set you'll need to answer this significant amount of questions, most of the critical reasoning questions that you'll run into. The not as good news is that you'll really need to cultivate your understanding so that you can effectively reason and apply this skill to a variety of situations. In quant problems, there are very few isolated facts that you'll need to just memorize, such as, is 1 a prime number? It is not, by the way. Most of the information that you need will be applied repeatedly in different situations, but it's the same basic stuff. If you are familiar with properties of numbers, algebra, and statistics, then you can apply those to solve a lot of the problems you're going to run into. However, solving a problem isn't the same as solving a problem efficiently. This brings me to the second pattern worth noticing. GMAT problems are designed to be solved quickly. This is most applicable to the quant section. If you've brushed up on your math skills and you're not making lots of calculation errors, but you encounter a question that looks just tedious and cumbersome to solve, then there's a chance that it involves some trick that you are missing. I will demonstrate with a couple of examples. I'm going to go through 3 target test prep problems that seem very time-consuming to solve when you first encounter them, and then I'll show you the twist and how much easier and quicker noticing it makes the solution process. First up, we have this one. Initial impression, it looks like a lot, but what if we notice these approximate inches? Now, that is going to simplify things a lot. We can take these, flip the second, and multiply. Cross out to cancel, and we have 8 over 3 times 3, or 8 over 9, which is answer E. Right over here. Much simpler. Next problem. Here we have it. Seems kind of tedious, I think we can all agree. But notice 27 is 3 cubed, so x really equals 3 cubed to the 324, or 3 to the 972. Now that we've got the same base, we can subtract the exponents and get 3 to the 838. Well, that's still a lot of math, but we actually only need the units digit of x over y, and there are often patterns in units digits for exponents. So let's see if we can find one here. Looks like 3971, 397. So it repeats in a pattern of 4. So we can simply divide 838 by 4. which gives us 209, remainder 2. And we can check our pattern to see that when the remainder is 2, the second unit's digit in the pattern is 9, which equates to the answer will be E as well, right here. Let's look at one more. Here is our final problem. Boo! Who wants to calculate this when you are trying to rush through a test? Except if you notice that because 1 squared is 1, this is actually a difference of squares. Here we can do the first part and get it down to 998,000 pretty quickly. Similarly, the second part can be equated to 9,800 fairly quickly. What percent is 998,000 of 9,800? Well, X, the percent, equals 99,800,000 divided by 9,800, which is 998,000 over 98, which is approximately 1 million divided by 100, or 10,000. Since 10,000 isn't in the answer choices, we will have to look for the closest match. The closest to 10,000 is going to be B, 10,183. It's the closest by a significant margin. This problem is a little more complicated than the previous two, but I always like to point out a sneaky difference of squares problem because it's one of the signals for a trick approach that I have personally been known to miss. These little tricks are one of the reasons why the quant prep section of many GMAT study resources is so large. There's often more than one way to solve a quant problem, and some will resonate with some students more so than others. So the more tips and methods that you are exposed to, the more likely you are to find one that's useful and memorable enough that you'll think to employ it on test day. Closely related to this quickness pattern is our final pattern. The more information you're given, the more of it you'll need to sort through and ignore. This is most prominent in reading comp questions and many data insights questions. Think about it like this. In verbal, if you have a critical reasoning question, then it's likely every sentence will be crucial to answering the question. In reading comp, there are far more sentences, and they don't all get a starring role. This is why you've got to read through the whole passage and get a good idea of what's going on, but you don't have to memorize every detail. It's much quicker and more accurate to go back and refer to exactly what the author said about panda birth rates declining or the author's prediction for the impact of digital currency if there's a question about it than it is to try to deep dive into all of their takes on the first read through. On data insights, they will drown you in the details if you let them. But if you go through and get the highlights and only dive deep where the question requires it, then the whole process is smoother. These are the 3 overarching patterns that I've noticed with the GMAT, but there are some smaller ones that will emerge in specific situations or question types. If you're looking out for them, then you can find ways to make your testing experience as pain-free and efficient as possible. Feel free to share any patterns that you have noticed in the comments to help out your fellow testers.